All right, so the long-awaited list for the full-frame lenses that Sigma should bring to the market. Now, I know Sigma has been plagued with questions about where are the full-frame lenses. They've done some crop-frame lenses now that Canon has released the patent, whatever filing for the RF mount, but you have to be able to wow the full frame users as well. And I think I'm going to get into why they have not done full frame lenses at the end of this video. So if you want to stay tuned and watch that, you can watch that. But these are the top 10 lenses that I think Sigma should bring to the RF mount for full frame. Now, this first lens, I'm pretty sure everybody already knows, but it is the Sigma 105 1.4. Now, I think for a fact that it has been discontinued. I'm not sure right now, but I think I heard that the 105 1.4 has been discontinued. I don't know if that means the same thing for the RF mount, but for the EF mount, it had been discontinued. But it was such a popular lens because it was one of the only ones in its kind. I mean, you have your 100 millimeter macros from Canon, but you never had anything faster than 2.8 or f2. Now you're going to 1.4, and I think that's just about a stop difference from f2, maybe somewhere around 2/3 of a stop, but it's a massive difference, and the lens was massive, but it gave you such a unique look, such a deep shallow depth of field with that compression. And 105 was like that sweet spot to where you don't want to go too much farther or you can't talk to the subject that you're photographing. And yes, this was a portrait lens and it was a niche lens, but a lot of people liked it because it was an EF lens and it was for the Canon mount. A lot of people couldn't have it for another mount. I think they had one for the Nikon mount, but Nikon and Canon was always winning because Canon sold the most cameras. So the 105 1.4 was a unique lens that it seemed like Canon had like the most buyers for. So the 105 1.4 for the RF full frame mount would be really, really cool. Then you have your regular Holy Trinity, your 24 to 70 lens. 24 to 70, I guess it would be an art lens, or they might be changing the designation there. But 24 to 70 art lens for the RF full frame body. I use Sigma lenses all the time. I have a 24 to 70 art lens for the Canon R5. I just use the adapter. And please, of course, we want to have the updates. We want to have better eye tracking autofocus, better this, that, and the other. Even though the Sigma the EF version of the art lens worked really well for the 24 to 70, but we want those, it to be just a little bit keener working with the camera. Now that you have the release, the lens is released, the lens mount is released, so you're able to work better with Canon to have better, autofocus adjustments and things of that nature. So if we could have that and not have that Sigma lens dock where you had to change everything, I feel like that was a little bit of a waste of money because I purchased that to, adjust the EF lens to work better with the RF body, but it didn't really do much. So now that we have mirrorless cameras and we can use the screen to focus, and it's more of a direct focus instead of going down to that engine in the DSLRs, I feel like we should have better focusing art lenses. So 24 to 70, 70 to 200, same thing. I love the fact that they had like a contemporary version and an art version, one for a little bit more of a casual use and one for more of like an art version higher end, and then like I had a sports version. The sports version was meant for a lot more faster action. Maybe the autofocus is tuned a little bit sharper and keener so it can work with these extremely advanced autofocusing systems with case modes and all this other stuff on these mirrorless cameras. So this next one was because Canon brought out this lens, but Canon came out with this lens, and a lot of people were happy that they came out with this lens, but a lot of these lenses are designed to be fixed by the cameras instead of showing the entire field of view. And this is a 16 millimeter 2.8. Even though it's a nifty lens, I like the lens. The lens is really, really nice. I just fear that the edges would not work well in, I want to say, architectural situations, real estate situations, because the camera is compensating and it's fixing the edges instead of, so you would have like vignetting and chromatic aberrations and not sharp corners because the camera is constantly trying to fix the edges instead of having a camera that is, or a lens that is designed to have those edges really cut out sharp and nice. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but and it seems as though Canon is now making their lenses to be corrected later in post instead of having, I guess, higher quality glass. But I don't want to speak too forwardly because I know that it takes a lot of engineering to make these lenses, and now the sensor is closer to the lens, and they might not be able to get the lenses out in time to not have them corrected after the fact. I don't know. So maybe that makes sense to you. But 60 millimeter 2.8, make a better version. I hope a redesigned version, not just something that you took and recycled from the EF days. So there's that. A 100 to 500 millimeter. Now Canon came out with a 100 to 500 millimeter. They came out with a 100 and 400 millimeter. But the 100 to 500 millimeter was, a lot of people thought that they just put a converter on it, made it a little bit different, but it was essentially the same EF version, and it was slower. The 100 and 500 that they came out with. So they're making a whole bunch of variable aperture lenses just to get a little bit more range out of the lenses, but the aperture's a lot slower. So maybe a faster 100 to 500, maybe make it an f4 if you can, without it being too bulky and big for the user to use. A 50 millimeter 1.2. Now, I know Sigma is big on making 1.8 lenses, 1.4 lenses, especially 1.4, but I've never seen a 1.2. So if you come out with a 50 millimeter to attract a lot more attention, make it a bit faster. I know I'm saying a lot just by saying a bit faster is, because I've never really seen Sigma make too many 1.2 lenses. I'm pretty sure they kind of capped themselves at 1.4 as the fastest speed for the light transmission of the lens. So maybe a 1.2 to maybe turn some heads, because Canon has a lovely 1.2 50 millimeter lens, but it is very cost prohibitive even now after the lens has been out for like what, 3-4 years. So an 85 millimeter 1.4, I don't think Sigma needs to go to the 1.2 realm in the 85 millimeter. It would be nice if they did, but they don't need to, because the 1.4 on the 85 millimeter is really, really nice, because a lot of lenses are not fast the more telephoto that they are. Now, the reason why I said a 50 millimeter 1.2 is because 50 millimeter is such a readily available focal length. Like, anybody can find it, anybody can get it, and anybody can really find it at faster apertures like 1.4. So for Sigma to stand out and really make a splash in the full frame community, now that they've gotten their privileges back for utilizing the RF mount, is a 1.2 version of this. If they come out with one 1.2 version of a lens for a full frame, it would, it would make a big splash. Oh, 1.2 for a cheaper third-party cost, it would be amazing. So the 85 millimeter being at 1.4 doesn't make that big of a difference, because it's a 1.4 millimeter over 60 millimeters. So the more telephoto you get, the rarer those faster glasses are. So if you have a 1.4 version of the 85, it's fine. Plus the 1.4 HSM art lens from the EF days was plagued with some autofocus issues, but amazing image quality. So a lot of people were frustrated by that. And then Sigma production of RF lenses came to a halt. Now that they're back, if we had a revamped 85 version that really worked well with a Canon camera that was reliable for pros to use in the field, it would be amazing. So a 1.4 85 millimeter that's really, really tight, autofocus, clean operation on a full frame RF body. Let's go. And I think this next one, might be the last one, or last two. You got the 100 to 400. Now, Canon made a 100 to 400, and they made a cheaper version of it, but it wasn't a fast lens. It went all the way to f8. A lot of people that are pros are not really trying to deal with that downside of f8. Now, 100 to 400 is pretty much a standard focal length that camera manufacturers have been making for a while. The fact that Canon came out with a 100 to 400, I'm pretty sure they have a faster version of it, but the cheap, I'm talking about literally the cheaper market of it, it's definitely a very on the slower end of things. So if Sigma could make a constant aperture cheap version of the 100 to 400, that will probably let a lot of people know that Sigma is here to compete with Canon RF lenses, but also bring more people to the Canon RF body, because Sigma doesn't really make a camera body, so they gotta kind of come. Well, I think they did make a camera body a while ago, but it's not as popular as Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, Sony, all these other brands. So they gotta do something with their brand. So it'll be nice to see a nice 100 to 400 on a RF full frame body that has a constant aperture that is cheap. I'm pretty sure Canon has a higher version of that 100 to 400, but it's not cheap. The 100 to 400, the variable aperture, maximum aperture of f8 when it zooms all the way in, that's not what we want. You can't really use that in a lot of situations without looking like a cell phone image, as far as image quality and noise. And another, I wanted to say, honorable mention goes out to the 100 to 300. I really wanted to say 100 to 300 2.8, but I think this other lens that I replaced it with really shines a little bit more, and it is the 150 to 600 it was like a 3.5 to 6.3 lens. I think that needs to be revamped just for the RF full frame bodies, because it was a very popular lens, and I didn't really get into it on the EF side of things, but I really want to get into it on the RF side of things. I really want to push my full frame mirrorless to its max. A lot of people like that wide of that long of a focal length in the telephoto region, because we could now get 600 millimeters at what, 6.3. That's a pretty decent aperture for 600 millimeters. Other than that f8 that Canon has been giving us, they gave us a 600 millimeter f8. They gave us what at 800 f11, I think. So there's a whole bunch of slow heavily reaching lenses or telephoto lenses, but I just that 150 to 600 variable aperture maximum at 6.3 is a great lens to have. It's a nice, you want to say, balance. It's from focal length to the amount of light that you lose when you're zooming in for that long of focal length. And we really would like to see that, or I would really like to see that. If you could make it a little bit faster, that would be awesome. Maybe instead of have it at 2.8 and make it go to, I don't know, 5.6. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how creating the lenses work, but I'm just basing this off of what I would think to be common sense. I am not a lens manufacturer, and I know how hard physics can be, because I took physics 2 in college. I know exactly how hard image transmission, electronics can be when it's dealing with all that physics. That's why it takes a whole bunch of people to make this stuff. Hats off to any major lens maker. This stuff is hard. I don't want to just seem like I'm asking for anything, and anything is possible. I know that creating a 600 millimeter f1.2 is very impractical. All right, guys, I know I've been on my soapbox all day. I just wanted to talk about this because it's been heavy on my spirit. What should Sigma do? Let me know in the comments below. There are new links to support the channel, to keep us going here, or keep me going here. And stay tuned for the next video.